You are in for a wonderful treat this afternoon. I think we are ready to begin. Everybody seated? Good?
Before we begin, I just want to let you know that this presentation will be available on YouTube. So we need you to be an extremely quiet audience because all of this is being recorded. So please, we invite people to be here, we expect them to be quite cooperative. And cell phones need to be off. Off. Not just whatever you usually do. Off. All right? Thank you. You don't have to.
Laura says I should say something, but I don't know if somebody supposed to say something before he talks?
Yes. We'll let you know.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll let you know.
Am I in the
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Zach Rosenfeld.
And I'm Naomi Hall. We will be the MCs for today's program.
Welcome to our Team 8B final event of the year. We are here today as a culmination of our study of World War II in our social studies class.
And the study of the Holocaust and the Anne Frank in our ELA class.
The purpose of today's program is twofold. In the first portion of our program, we will be presenting a special gift to the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center of Nassau County with gratitude for allowing us to visit their museum last month and hear the testimony of 2 Holocaust survivors.
Next, we will have the honor of hearing the testimony of World War II veteran and liberator, Mr. Morris Sunshine, and his wife, Mrs. Dora Sunshine.
We would like to acknowledge the following people affiliated with the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center of Nassau County in Glen Cove, New York. Please welcome Holocaust survivor Alex Constantine, whose testimony many of us had the privilege of hearing the day of our visit. And his wife, Miss Susan Constantine, as well.
We would also like to recognize Lois Lutwin and Sid Waxman, who are both docents and very knowledgeable tour guides.
In response to our visit, we were inspired to reflect upon the importance of tolerance in today's society.
Ms. Galera and Ms. Adler came up with the idea to create a commemorative quilt. As a result, every member of our team designed a unique quilt square containing words of tolerance, as well as a graphic depiction of those words. We would like to ask those from the Holocaust Center to join us up front so that we may show you our final product.
Amazing and beautiful, and so touching, and so well done. 7 minutes, it's incredible, really incredible.
Shows you really listen to what we say.
Thank you so much for all your hard work and efforts, the students and the teachers.
The symbolism of many squares coming together to form a beautiful work of art further reinforces the concept of many people coming together for a common cause.
We are happy to present to you our Team 8B Tolerance Quilt as a small token of appreciation for everything you do to raise awareness in our society. We would also like to acknowledge one of our high school teachers, Amy Levine, who not only was kind enough to deliver a presentation to our team on Thursday regarding the story of Lena's Promise, but also to arrange for the Sunshines to be here with us today.
World War II liberators were essential in helping us bring an end to the atrocities that were happening in Europe during this tragic time in history.
We are so fortunate to be able to hear firsthand accounts from the perspectives of both survivors and liberators.
Mr. Sunshine was recently a recipient of a very prestigious award, the French Medal of Honor, for his valor and bravery during World War II.
Please give a round of applause as we welcome World War II U.S. veteran and liberator, Mr. Morris Sunshine, and his wife, Mrs. Dora Sunshine.
Ready to go? Hello, hello. Can you hear me? Loud enough? Back there?
Yes.
Okay. Let me give you a little fingerprint background of my young life before I got into the Army. Graduated high school, Pearl Harbor happened. I wanted to go enlist in the Army. My father wouldn't let me because he would have to sign the papers. But I was furious at the Pearl Harbor bombing and the situation that existed, that the Japanese were at the White House talking to the White House people, and they were bombing Pearl Harbor. So I got very bitter. And my father wouldn't let me go into the Army as an enlisted person, so I had to wait to be drafted. I was drafted into a combat engineer outfit, which was made up of people from New York and New Jersey, actually that kind of area. And we went and we trained at Camp Gordon. But before that, I played drums and piano, and I used to play up in the mountains, in the Catskills, and up in the hay fever country in New Hampshire. And when I was going into the Army, the three guys from my band, or the band I was working with, were in Newport News, Virginia, in the United States Army Band, and they said, "We've got a request for you to end up in Newport News, Virginia with us." That never happened because anybody that was in my battalion, nobody was allowed to leave it. Nobody went to ASTP school. Nobody became an officer. No, it was a special, secret, new kind of outfit. We were combat engineers. We were trained to fight as infantry and to work as engineers, minefields, build bridges, whatever was necessary to get this war over with. But everybody in that outfit was down because they couldn't get what they thought they could become an officer, etc. And like I was, but I was slick. I thought, I'm going to start a band. And usually if the band is good and great, you'll stay with the company or with the fort that you were at. I was in Camp Gordon, Georgia. And that's what I did. I started a big 15-piece jazz band, and we were the talk of Augusta, Georgia, and we played for the officers club and said I thought I had everything covered, so I'll be able to leave this place and get to Newport News where I really belong. That never happened. I was also blocked, but the band went on until I left Camp Gordon, Georgia. But I ended up in the Mojave Desert in California. We did maneuvers in this country, in Tennessee, and we must have had about 6 to 8 months of training when they shipped us overseas. We landed in England, and we had more training in England until we were getting set up for the invasion. We had a lot of pre-training for the invasion, And I became a sergeant, so I had a squad of 20 guys under me. And we were practicing all kinds of landings and minefields and building of bridges, everything that was necessary from a combat engineering situation. But primarily, we did both things. We fought as infantry when necessary, and we built and blew up bridges when necessary. When we started to load up the ship that was going to make the attack on D-days, I was on it'll come to me. They had us mount the ship and go around England about 3 or 4 days because it was raining, and we couldn't land on the beaches. I was supposed to land on Omaha Beach, but I didn't because my ship that I was on was hit by a German mine in the English Channel, one of 2 big boats that would happen. And all our equipment, our helmets, our guns, everything that we had and owned was down in the hold. And when that ship went down, it went down with all that equipment. We had to jump off the boat that I was on into other boats, and some of them were English escort carriers and things, smaller boats, but we had to get off that boat because that boat was going down. And we had a wonderful captain who was able to balance the boat until maybe over 1,500 people had to get off. And I landed on a boat with 20 of my guys, and I was happy as hell because I had no gun, I had no helmet, and I can't make the invasion without these things. But was I stupid? Because I went in like everybody else. And the only break that I can really thank God for is that we were transferred. Since we had no equipment, we couldn't fight on Omaha Beach, which was a very tough battle. We were taken to Utah Beach, which was taken by the Allied forces, and we landed there with no helmets and no packs and nothing but what we had on our backs. And everybody that saw us wanted to know what we were. Were we Germans in disguise? They couldn't believe that American troops were coming in this way. But be it as it may, we got into the hedgerows. We slept there, and the next day we got up, and we had to try to find out where the rest of my battalion was. And that's not easy to do because you're on Utah Beach and you're supposed to be on Omaha Beach, so that became a problem. And people I were with, we didn't have any rifles, and we decided we should pick up some guns. And that place was laden. It was the beach. There were plenty of dead bodies, plenty of dead Germans and dead American boys. We couldn't get ourselves to pick up American rifles, American ammunition from the dead bodies. So we decided to take the guns from the Germans. And we took the German ammunition, and it felt better for us to take this supply from the Germans than it did bother the American dead. And being a sergeant, I said, we better learn how to shoot these guns. So we went over to the banks where the pillboxes were already taken and started shooting into the English Channel. And it didn't take 15 minutes that I found out that we were surrounded by the American troops, the Rangers, that landed very early on the beaches of Normandy. And they heard German guns, and they came to kill you, which made sense to me too. And when they tried to yell in German, there was no response. And I was yelling, we're American, blah, blah, blah. And finally said, you're Americans, we're going to ask you some question. Who was Max Baer? Who was Lou Gehrig? Who was, these kind of questions that any good American would know. And when I answered them, they said, look, if you're going to shoot German guns, the Rangers are going to come after you. So it was a very rough situation, but we had to do what we had to do, and we certainly couldn't use the American guns that were there. We just had to wait for new equipment to come through on the invasion. Well, we had no equipment, we had no guns, but what we could do is we could blow up minefields, we could set up dynamite to bring down some places that were dangerously, they were wavering in the wind. And one of the places was a church, what do you call it? What do you call a church? Steeple, that's it. Thank you. A church steeple, because it was tottering, and the force of American tanks and truck and other equipment would totter this steeple, and it would land on the cars that were going to have to pass this place. There was only one road to try to get to Sherborne, and the other road was to get to St. Louis. And the thing was to capture Sherborne and use that as a port of embarkation and the port to receive all kinds of stuff. And I had the steeple ready to blow and ready to crank the case when a vehicle drives up, and I see there's a two-star flag on it, which means it was a two-star general, and he's yelling, "Who's in charge here? Who's in charge here?" Well, I go up, Sergeant Sunshine, sir, and he says, "I got to get through." I said, "You can't. The fuse is set. This is ready to blow any minute once I turn that crank." He says, "I gotta go." I said, "The movement of your car, your truck could disturb the explosives. I gotta get through." Finally, he had enough of that, and he said, "General, I can't argue with the general." And I said, "Okay, that's what you want to do, go ahead." And back I went to where I was, and I turn around and I see this guy is now standing up in his tractor. And I see that he has two pearl-handled guns, six guns, cowboy guns on the side. And I said, now I know who the guy I was talking to. It was Patton. And Patton and I had a couple of arguments in this war, but this was the dumbest thing that a guy could have done, is go through that passage, which they did. And thank goodness everything went well. Just on the side of this church was in a town called Valognes. It was the second town that was taken in the landing. The first one was St. Mary, Greece, and this Valognes was maybe about 5 or 6 kilometers on the side of it. And when I took my wife back to Europe, many years later, she wanted to see the pillboxes, she wanted to see where we came in and whatever else we did that first day on shore. And I said, I don't want to go back to that place no matter what. She said, well, I want to see it. And when your wife says, I want to see it, you're going to go. So I said, we're going to go the way I know how to get to back. And we were then in Holland. And I said, I'll rent a car, I'll drive back. I don't want to get any tours of the buses. I don't want to go to the cemeteries. I don't want to go to the museum. There's a lot I don't want to do because it would bring back too much to what I had gone through. But I did. I took her back to the beach, and we walked by this town in Valognes, and there was the church, and the steeple was up, and it looked beautiful. So we decided, I said, there was a boulanger, which is a bakery. I'm going to go in there, I'm with our broken French, which we both are capable of doing, I'm gonna ask questions and ask them what happened to the church. And I did that, and they told me that the bombings, the American bombs, wrecked the church and wrecked the steeple. Little did they know that I was the guy that wrecked the steeple, and I didn't want to dare tell them that. But the church was remade, and it was a beautiful sight to see that the thing came out so nicely. At any rate, I stayed in the combat engineers were supposed to build bridges where necessary and take care of minefields. And when you weren't doing that, you were fighting the war as infantry. And so we did both. And we finally came up to the Seine River. This was many, many weeks later. And there was the biggest bridge over the Seine River was in a city called Melun, which was about 50 miles below Paris. And it took about a week and a half to build this Bailey Bridge. And I'm not going to go into tell you what it is, but it takes a lot of manpower and a lot of time to do. And they named the bridge the Dinah Shore Bridge, because Dinah Shore was going to come up and put on a show for all of us because of the hard work of doing the bridge. And that's exactly what happened. And it was a thrill, to meet her. She was a nice woman, and I met the piano player, who was a very nice guy, and I want to give this, the Red Cross. If you went into the Red Cross and you wanted to buy a cup of coffee and a donut, you paid for it. If you went into the English Salvation Army, you got your coffee and you got your donut and you got your tea free. And I resented that terribly, that we had to pay the Red Cross that everybody's contributed for getting a donut. So I said, we're going to get even with the Red Cross someday, and I'll tell you about that in a little bit. But and I wanted to get to Paris. I figured, I'm 50 kilometers away, and I want to get there. So we had the use of a Jeep, and 4 of us would go up to Paris. And when we got to the outskirts of Paris, they were shooting there. And we didn't want to get any part of the shooting between the Americans and the French and the Germans. So we got the heck out of Paris within an hour's time. And back to Melun and the Dinah Shore Bridge. And so the war was going very nicely until we ran to a stop, and there was no enough fuel coming through, there was no gas coming through, not enough food coming through. And what we were trying to do is get to the Rhine River, us and hundreds of soldiers like us. And we ended up in a place called the Hürtgen Forest, which is the Black Forest in Germany. And we stayed there for 4 months. And we were in Foxhole, me and 4 other guys, for 4 months without taking a bath, without taking and you ate out of your helmet, you ate it. It was a terrible place to be. Then came the Battle of the Bulge, and we were removed from North Foxhole and went back to Belgium to help take care of the Battle of the Bulge, which we did. And I remember on New Year's Eve, we built a bridge over the Meuse River, which was outside of Belgium, and near the church in the town that we were at. And after that, we went right back into the hole where I left 3 weeks ago, back into the Hürtgen Forest, waiting impatiently for a way to cross the Rhine River. And I don't know if people know, but the Germans blew every bridge on the Rhine River but one, and that was the Remagen Bridge. And when that was seen that it was still alive and well, the American soldiers started crossing it, and this was a very big thing because it opened up the whole German Germany to the fight. And this went on until we came to, like, it was like in the middle of Germany, and it was a very precious place because they had two churches there. One Bach played the organ in, and we stayed in this town for Harley was the name of the town. And the other one was Beethoven conducted one of his scores in another church that was close. And in this cultural place, all this horror was going on. We had orders to meet the Russians. By that time, the Russians had entered Berlin and taken it. And so we were going to meet the Russians at the Elbe River. And when we both met, when the two armies would meet, that would be practically the end of the war. And we started to march towards the Elbe River. We started to smell something, and smell it, and the smell was horrible. And we couldn't make out what it really was, but we knew it was the smell of death. And we had known the smell of death on the first day that you got on the beach, and you're living with it. But this was horrific. And as we went closer and closer to the smell, we came upon a town called Nordhausen. And Nordhausen had a concentration camp, and it was a very important concentration camp. They had a factory built under a mountain, and in there they were manufacturing rockets. The first place where they manufactured rockets. And these rockets were called V1 and V2, and they were firing the rockets into London or England arbitrarily. They didn't care where they hit, whether it hit people or no matter what, but that's what they were using this place for. And this place was a concentration camp. The people that were working on the rockets were people that were stuck in this concentration camp. And as we came into the town, one gate was open. And in there, I saw one German guard being mauled and violated, or just ripped apart by the people at the concentration camp in their anger on what he stood for and what the concentration camp did to these people. I met somebody on the street who was walking sort of carefully because he didn't know who we were. Well, I told him we were American troops and who we were, and I asked him, "Are you hungry?" He said, "Yes." And do you know anybody else that's hungry? Yes. And we took these people and brought them over to the mess truck, had them fed, and that was the worst thing we could have done to them, because what the American soldier was eating was richer than anything they probably tasted in 5 years. And we were feeding them crackers, and as we were treating them, these people were fading away in our hands. It was a terrible thing, but we don't know anything about health matters. We know about war. We didn't know whether we should give them shots of medicine or to feed them. So we took the food route, and it was terrible to see the outcome. This camp of Nordhausen was set in the town of Nordhausen, which was like Jericho. It was a very well-to-do town, and the town was across from the concentration camp. There was one main street. Here was Nordhausen, here was the concentration camp. So some people were walking, and you didn't know this. I just keep emphasizing the smell. The smell of death is left to die and lay in the woods or lay up in silos. They had about 4 silos, about 4 stories high, with bodies in them. And the bodies were nude, and they were laying there hand to hand and foot to foot. And they weren't buried. And they were probably waiting to get put into the ovens. But that wasn't to be, because now the Americans were there, and it's a whole different party. But the first thing the Americans did was get the whole town out, marched into those silos, and emptied those 4 souls that were hung up there. And because we had we were engineers, we carried a bulldozer with us. And the bulldozer dug a common grave, and it took about a good couple of days to empty out those places and put the people in the empty common grave, and we sprinkled some lye, so probably to try to keep any kind of disease away, and buried them in there. I don't know who they were. Nobody else knows who they were, but they were laying up there for months, and that was the odor that was hitting us 20 and 40 miles away. We stayed in Nordhausen, and as long as we could, until we had to march on to the next place, which was the Elbe River. We left these poor guys with people from our mess truck with all kinds of food. And Americans travel with all kinds of food. They travel with chocolate, lollipops, and toilet paper. You name it, it's well kept, and we left it with these people. These people hadn't bathed in months. They got a potato a day, and that's what they lived on. They didn't get anything else to be fed. If they died, they died. Nobody seemed to care. But now we had to leave Nordhausen that way. Meanwhile, the rear echelon, the American Army rear echelon, was moving into the area, and they were going to take care of business. They opened up medical centers within Nordhausen. They went in and they checked everything out. And the toughest part is not to go into the town and see these people living in such a nice manner that you wanted to blow their heads off, because what was sitting next to them, maybe 50, 20 yards, and they said they never smelled anything. It's such baloney that they threw at us that made us angrier and angrier. But the captain said we have.
What were you told to do to keep people in town?
Oh, yeah. When we first got to town, we first saw what was doing there. We were told to get everybody out of their houses and march into the concentration camp, and in the concentration camp and into the factory to see what's doing there and what town they were living in, and the smell that they never smelled. This way they had to smell what the smell was. And we had to leave because we had to meet the Russians at the Elbe River. So we left Nordhausen, and before we did, when the Germans left Nordhausen, they took gasoline and kerosene and were going to burn it down with the people in it. But we came on, the troops came in too fast for them to do it. The best they can do, they laid down the gasoline, but the soldiers ran away. They took off their uniforms, of course these were all SS soldiers, and changed them into civilian clothes, which they found in the town of Nordhausen, because they knew that if we caught an SS guy, we know what to do with it. It was to me, it was something I can't see that man could do that to man, what they did, and I never forgot it. And I think it should be told to the world still, because this nonsense, this madness is still going on. Man is killing man for whatever reason. Nothing has changed. And to me, that's a shocking thing to know that it's still happening, what is happening in Arabia and Syria, et cetera, Africa. There's something wrong with the human animal that it kills just to kill. I mean, a lion, a tiger, a dog, a cat will kill to eat. But the human animal just kills to kill. There's something, I think, radically wrong with the human being. And back to leaving Nordhausen and going towards the Elbe River, which was maybe about 40 kilometers away, we met the Russians. And the first time we met the Russians and the Americans, everybody was afraid or not sure how to handle the Russians, and the Russians didn't know how to handle the Americans because of all the stuff they had heard before. But so it went. The Elbe River ended the war. Roosevelt had died. Hitler was killed himself. The Russians were in Berlin, and my captain came to me and said, "We're sending you to Berlin to set up. You're going to get housing for your squad and for the troops that were coming in. We want you there because there's a special program which your platoon was going to do." The special program was they had taken in Berlin the Telefunken factory, which was like the RCA factory here. It was a huge plant, about stories and stories high. And they wanted to make that into a 4-power complex for the Russians, for the English, the French, and the Americans. But it had to be set up. You had to clean it up, get rid of all the stuff that was in there, and then make it into a place where it would be justifiable for the four nations. And my officer, the lieutenant in charge of the platoon, he wasn't really very much interested in doing his project. He was interested in one thing: getting the girl. So this had to be arranged for to get him out of the way, because I spoke Yiddish, and Yiddish is close to German, and I would interview prisoners in Yiddish, and they would ask me, "Bist du ein Hamburger? Did you come from Hamburg, or did you come from..." Because I would use Jewish terms like "Efshe" instead of "Reich," and soon I learned how to speak correct German. But they didn't understand my pig Latin German because it wasn't German, it was Jewish. Anyway, we got to the plant, and we had to go to the guilds to get help. Painters, electricians, whatever you need to build a building. And when we got those people over to the building, they were guaranteed food, they were guaranteed cigarettes. They had some of the comforts of life. These people didn't have coffee. They had all this kind of stuff they lost during the war. So I was very proud of going to the guild and getting the guild workers back to the Telefunken building, and I told everyone that ich bin a Judah. I wanted them to know that I was Jewish. And I wanted them, if that put a scare into them, I was very happy about it. And the project went on, it was fulfilled. By now, the war was coming to an end, and my captain was a very nice man, knew that we were a fighting troop, and once the war would end, they would make the engineers like the Department of Sanitation to help clean up the mess. rather than what we were doing, the fighting and building of bridges. So he said, every morning he's gonna take the trucks out, everybody's gonna go on a truck, they're gonna be baseball bats, and we're going out, we're gonna play ball in the morning, then we'll come back, have lunch, and we're going out to play ball. He didn't want his company to do this menial work, just busy work after what we had gone through. And he even said to me, I want you to go find a cafe in Berlin where you can get some music together. Of course, he knew all that, and start a band. And I did. I found a cafe with a very nice, hard for me to say this, very nice German, and who ran it, and he seemed to know everybody in town and who's doing what. I said, okay. There was a piano in his bar, and he said he knew a piano player. I said, well, I don't know if he plays American tunes, jazz, and he knows anything about it. He said, well, you talk to him, which I did. And I met Hans and asked him to play something. I was shocked that he was playing Teddy Wilson. He knew about Benny Goodman, he knew about Count Basie, and this is unheard of. And I asked him where he learned these things. He said he used to smuggle records in from Italy, and that's how he learned about American music. And he was quite a pro. So I said to him, okay, I got a job for you. You'll get fed. And he was tickled as he could be. But I said, I need a drum set. He said, I know where there's one. And I went to the basement of his friend who had a box in drum set, a swing-on drum set, which was American, one of the best sets made in the world. And so we got that drum set, we got the piano player, we got a bass fiddle player, we got a guy playing the saxophone. We had a great place at this bar where everybody came. My captain would just get everybody off the premises, so when they came looking for men to do this kind of menial work, they weren't there for that. And that was my life in Berlin. It was very interesting and but the camp, I never forgot that. And I was shocked to see when I got home that very few people knew about concentration camps. They knew, but they didn't really know. And when I got home, I went out and I tried to find books and stories and anything I could to show people what people can do to other people. And I was successful, and I never stopped preaching, and I haven't stopped preaching today about the situation. People are killing people, and it's insanity after insanity. There's got to be a way that people can live with other people. And I'm sorry to say, all the years after the war, and what I see out there now in Africa and Europe, et cetera, it's just a tragedy. So I am always on a quest to make this change. I don't know if I'll ever be successful, but I'm trying.
I just want to say this, that Mars, in his letters, kept talking about, they got to the end of the war, about coming home, and he wasn't going to be one of the first because he wasn't married and he didn't have children. The first to come back, who were able to get back, were the men who were married and had children.
Excuse me, it was a point system, that was set down by the government. If you had children and you were married, you got more points than just being single and just fighting. You know, who cares about that? So.
But then when Morris began to write about this band that he was forming and how he was like the king because he let them know he was Jewish and they were thrilled that he wasn't going to murder them, that he used them to help build this area. And then he had a band going. I thought, here he's talking about how unfair and he can't get home and he wants to come home and he's going to go AWOL, which meant, go without permission and get into trouble. And I begged him to just keep cool and wait. And now he's busy with a band. This was my life with Morris. When I met him, he was busy with a band. And I didn't have to worry about Morris meeting other women. And my losing him that way. But I sure could lose him to a group of musicians who were playing the jazz that he loved. And so.
So we got married.
No, but it was great that he could finally give that up when he got permission to go home and get back to civilization, yeah. And then we were married about about 8 months.
Yeah.
You got back, yeah, with your mother's permission.
Oh.
Yeah.
Now. Okay, I think I'll hold it from there. I'd like to know if anybody have any questions, any ideas, anything. Yes.
A couple of things that I wanted you to mention. I know the kids.
Speak louder.
Okay, I'm here. A couple of things that I wanted you to mention. One was your recent gift from the country of France.
Oh,
You want to talk about that?
this. We just
Your medal?
Oh.
2 years ago, I got a letter from the French consul that they want a copy of my discharge, et cetera, all kinds of army stuff. And I didn't know why they would want it, and I called up. They said, well, you've been awarded the, what is it called?
French Medal of Honor. Is it the French Medal of Honor?
Medal of Honor, yes, I'm sorry.
France.
And we want to make sure that you get one, or also that you deserve one. So I sent them my discharge that tells you where I've been in Europe and what I did. Oh, interesting about 2 years later came the French medal, and they want to put it on me, but I have to go into New York and start a whole thing, and I don't want to get into going to New York with my walking mechanism, and just because it's a medal, but I really think it's a very nice thing that we did, and it surprises me about some of the things that the French can do. All right, and
Tati,
way back.
Yes. You want to stand up, Tati, and
Can't
just
hear
speak
you.
real loud?
Did you have any relatives who were in concentration camps during this time?
Say again?
Did you have any relatives in concentration camps at this time?
No, none at all. All my relatives, everybody I knew, like my father's family and my mother's family, had come over there. This is the beginning of World War I. And some people didn't want to come because they had a life in Germany or in Poland. And those people were lost. They died in concentration camps. That we know. But that's as far as I got.
Morris's father's family, Morris's father came from Poland. That was before the war. And when it began, most of his relatives left Poland, and some came here and some went to Argentina. But there was one of his sisters who didn't want to leave because she had she was engaged to be married and didn't leave, and she ended up in a concentration camp. And they never heard from her again. And I know that my grandmother lost part of her family they lived in Germany she never heard from them again, and they could never find out what happened, and that was the end. She had two sisters who were killed by the Nazis. Yeah.
That's good.
I think also my students are interested in hearing about how you met and how long you've been married. So they want to know. They want to know how you met each other and how long you've been together. Who wants to know? Yes. See? What? That's the best part.
You want to know?
Okay.
All right, okay.
Let me
Well,
stop.
excuse me, I have to say that I met Morris and I met when we were in high school. And
I
then we lived in the same neighborhood, and Morris, I met him through a friend of mine. When this friend invited me to come to her home, on a weekend, we were classmates, and I come to visit her, and there were a number of guys who liked to play ball near her house, and there were a few, especially Morris, who liked after the ball game to go into her house because she had a piano. And he was always looking for somebody who had a piano because his parents never wanted, they had one, but they gave it up after his sister studied for many years and didn't become a pianist. So that was the end. So Morris settled for drums at home, which nearly made everybody crazy, but no piano. He meets me in my friend's home, and he finds out that I have a piano. And he also finds out that mine is a better piano than the one in this friend's house.
She had a baby grand piano in the house, unheard of.
So he started to come and visit my piano. And part of the deal was, to meet me and get to know me, and so that's how I caught him. It was through the
Piano had a
and
history.
then after the war we were married. I will say that we in September of this year, in a few months, we'll be celebrating our 69th wedding anniversary.
Wait, did I get the piano? Eventually, when I married her, she's one of four daughters, the oldest of four daughters. When I married her, I figured this piano is mine because she's the oldest, I play and she plays. So I went to her mother and said, well, am I going to get this piano? She said, I have three other daughters to marry. I said, no, you're not getting the piano. So I was very disturbed about that. But life went on. And eventually, each daughter married, and none of them took the piano or had the piano. I went back to Seal Kaminsky and said, what about now? Do I get the piano? She said, absolutely not. I like the piano, and people come to the house and they play, and I like what they play, and you come to the house and play. Says, so the piano stays. So the piano was a dead issue. And we had and buy a long piano until Seal died. And in her night table, there was a note that Murray and Doris get the piano. And we did, but I already had two Steinways, and I didn't need a piano. But I took it and I gave it to my son. So wherever we go, there's a piano.
my piano was
That's why we got married.
there. My mother loved him and he married me.
You want anything else about married life? I can give you a whole story.
Yeah,
What was life like for you while Morris was off fighting?
wait, you have to,
What was your life like while you were
Oh.
fighting during the war? How was it?
okay, well, he was away.
Mhm.
Well, Morris was away, he came once, when he was stationed out west for maneuvers and all of that. And there was one visit, we all lived in the same neighborhood. I knew his parents and knew the whole family, and came and visited, and then that was the last time. Then he went overseas, and I said, well, I can tell you a few things, that there weren't many young men around. It was very sad. There were lots of things that families had to do. There was rationing of certain kinds of food, that you had to have certain coupons to be able to buy meat and food like that. And also, for me and his family and friends, it was the fear. I listened to the radio all the time, and no television. We were listening to the radio then, and I just wondered, if he would ever get home, ever survive all that. It was really a very sad time. There were, the funny thing was, there were some young men around, and they were interested in taking me out. And since I wasn't engaged to be married, I had the right to go out. But as I would leave, my mother would say, "Don't forget Morris." And anyway, I didn't forget Morris, but I really, it was the very sad moments. Will Morris come back, and will he be hurt? Will he be injured? One of Morris's friends went off. He was in the Air Corps, and he was killed during the war. And to this day, he was a very close friend of Morris and mine, and a whole group of us. To this day, we've never forgotten him. We talk about him, and we also saw the terrible sadness in his own family's life in losing him. So,
Was he able to communicate with you at all during the war?
he was able to communicate with me, yes, and there were, I don't know if, well, maybe some people have heard about the email. I have samples of the email, what was the product. After a while, there were letters came, got letters all the time. I have all of the letters that Morris ever wrote to me. I saved the letters, and I guess it was after about 40 years that we were married. I said, "Don't you think it's time for us to start reading those letters? And then we can read them and we can get rid of them." But we started to read them, and so you had the war history in the letters, family history, his response to what I would write about. He was very close to my family, and all of those things were part of family history. So we decided we're not throwing them out, we're keeping them. I know some people did not save the letters, but when the letters began to come, there was always, at the bottom, there was a signature. I said, "What's that all about?" Here's something that was addressed to me, and there's someone's signature. And then I realized there's somebody reading these letters, because once in a while, some line, not too often, but some line was crossed out. he was not supposed to write, put it in writing in case the enemy got the letter. So when he came home and he looked at the letters, he said, he sees the names at the bottom, and he says, that so-and-so was reading my mail? It was either a captain, a lieutenant, it was someone in a higher office who was reading all the soldiers' mail and censoring it. And then later on, you know, these take up space. You know, this kind of letter takes up a lot of space. And you know, when they're lonely and unhappy and miserable, there could be a lot of pages in them. So then came what they call V-mail. Anybody, any of you guys know the V-mail? No, that it was, I still am not sure the
We had
process.
one sheet of paper, it was about this big, and they would photograph it to that size. And that was email, and you can't write very much on it. But when I saw who was reading my mail, and I knew who it was, I got very angry with the government. Because it was one of the officers that was his job to censor all mail that went out of the battalion's headquarters. And I didn't want him to know my private life with my girlfriend at the book.
So
So,
that was the story of the letter. And I know some of the kids, some of these students in the past have seen some of these, and everyone starts with darling or dearest, or my darling, my dearest, and they sit and giggle as they read that. But they were all, you know, very poignant, warm letters begging me not to forget him. He would sometimes write about some of the guys in his outfit who got what they called Dear John letters. I don't know, anybody ever hear that expression? I see a hand. Do you know what it meant?
Do you know what it meant? Very lucky
I
letter.
don't know. Do you want to tell us what it meant?
Well, I think it means a very lovely letter.
I can't.
I think it means like a very lovey letter, right?
The opposite.
Opposite.
A sad letter.
Yeah.
I
Great
Very
makeup.
sad letter.
well, also, it was, you know, begging you not to fall in love with anybody else. To wait, it was, you know, to wait for me till I come home, because so-and-so in my outfit got that kind of letter that his girlfriend is no longer supportive of what he's, him, and she met somebody else and she's marrying somebody else. So a lot of those letters were begging me, you know, to wait for me. Yeah.
Doris, can you talk a little bit about what life was like here in America? How we fought the war on the front? Well, the men were away
Yeah.
fighting. What was it like for
What was
Americans
it?
here?
It was, as I said, you know, it was a very sad time. And then, you know, the rationing of food, just, you know, there are food stamps now for people who have. But I can add that I was after high school. Well, Morris and he graduated one term before I did. At that time, it was 6 months term. So he graduated, he went off to Brooklyn College at night. I graduate the next term, I'm going to Brooklyn College at night. Both of us had to work. The message we got, you know, by the way, we didn't have to pay for college. We just had to pay for our books. A city college was free. But still, we had to help, you know, we had to support ourselves and maybe contribute something to the family. So we went to school at night. And my first job was in a department store in Gimbel's after I graduated.
I worked
I
there.
remember Gimbel's.
I worked in Gimbel.
Did you? I remember
I
Gimbel's.
worked
I
there.
shopped there.
Did you work for collections?
Were you in the collection
Better
department?
sportswear.
Oh, you sold.
I was lucky.
And I was in the office in
Oh.
the collection where I worked my way up. The collection. But then I learned that the Army was hiring civilians and they were paying much more. You could double your salary. And I applied for a job at the Brooklyn Army base. I was in an academic program, but I took one course of typing, so I was able to do office work.
We got Fort
They were
Hamilton first?
advertising, somebody say.
Fort Hamilton? We got Fort Hamilton?
New York
What
High
hap-
School.
Oh, okay.
Going
Yeah,
to celebrate 100 years.
Wow.
Wait, I missed.
You said you were at the Army base. I was asking if it was at Fort Hamilton.
Well, I was right, Fort Hamilton was right nearby.
Yeah.
It was the Brooklyn Army base, right on the water in Brooklyn.
Wow.
And Fort Hamilton was nearby. I worked with WACs. WACs were female soldiers. And then I started writing to Morris that I want to become a WAC. But, they wear a uniform, they make much less money than I was making. And his letter about that was so strong that I never pursued it. But when I applied for the job, I was wearing an engineering pin because he had sent me the pin because he was in the Corps of Engineers. The captain who interviewed me looks at what I'm wearing. He says, "You're all ready for this job, aren't you?" I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, you're wearing an engineering pin." I said, "Well, my boyfriend said that to me." He says, "Well, you're applying for a job with the Corps of Engineers." That's where I ended up, in the Corps of Engineers and in a department that was busy, working very hard to send supplies to the soldiers. And then another thing that was going on was, if there was an emptiness because so many of the young men were not here. And as I said, the sadness for the family. I mean, I remember his father, when I come and visit, his father was sitting and crying. See a man cry because he heard something on the radio that might have, about some problems and people and soldiers getting killed, thinking maybe it could be his son. But anyway, I guess what was when the soldiers, some of them started coming back, because we were at the Army base, we'd go out, the gals would go out on the small ships. We'd go out into the ocean and we'd be there to greet them coming back. That was so, you were weeping, you were crying and laughing and thrilled to see them. And then some of us had parties in our homes and invited the soldiers who were at the Army base to come to the party. And I will say, I'll never forget, one of the guys who found out that we were Jewish said, "Oh my goodness, and you don't have horns on your head." Came from the west of this country, and that's what they thought of, Jewish people. But he got a lesson on how warm and inviting and friendly a Jewish family could be. Oh, my friends were making parties.
Mr. Gaboris, did you want to ask a question?
Yes. Yes, I did. So I know that on the West Coast, they talked about a very strong anti-German feeling. I was just wondering how it was
on the west
here in New York.
Oh, is it, yeah? Is that what, oh, I'm sorry, because I didn't.
That's okay.
Yeah, but, an anti-German now?
No, then, at that
Oh, at that
time.
time, oh,
Anti-Japanese or anti-German?
oh. Anti-Japanese that was the horror. That was horrible. When they rounded up all the Japanese and put them in camps?
They put them in camps in California.
Oh, I think,
They didn't do that to the Germans.
they didn't do it, no. Oh, God, bringing back so many, they didn't do it to Germans. And I remember seeing Italian prisoners walking around, with a leader in our neighborhood. We lived in Borough Park in Brooklyn. You would see them with a whole group of Italian prisoners walking through, taking them from one place to another, I guess going to Fort Hamilton, which was in Brooklyn. But the Japanese, oh, I know you've probably read many stories. That what we did was amazing.
Did they recognize it at the time, though?
No.
Because I know, obviously, we look back today, and you say that was a tragedy, an atrocity,
There
but at that
was,
time,
no. They were not, nobody was talking about that. And here, we were so far away from, but as time went by, we realized it was a terrible thing to do. Of course, there are so many books written about it now. Yeah.
Alex?
Yes.
Yeah, have you encountered any anti-Semitism in Ireland?
No, because I was lucky to be, the troops that I was with, they came from New Jersey and the New York area. That's the way it started. As we lost people and they got what we call replacements, we started getting guys from Arkansas and Tennessee and all these other places. But they didn't have the power of the group. The power in the group was all from New Jersey and New York. We were the sergeants, we were the corporals, we were all the only thing that happened with these fellows, I have a story about that. When we got to Melun, France, which was just below Paris, they came looking for me, some of the guys in the outfit, and they said, there's a guy here that says he's Jewish and he's been living in the forest. You want to talk to him? I said, yeah, definitely. And these guys, they were shocked that this happened to this man, and that was the first Jew I met that had fought on the ground against the Nazis. And he said that he lived in Milan, and his house was taken over by German officers, and he would love to go see his house, but he's afraid. He doesn't know who's there, et cetera, and he wanted to know if I'd go with him. I said, sure, let's go. I was a big shot, I was a sergeant, I could do a lot of stuff. and we go, and we come to his house, and he goes into the house, and he looks at it, and he's always crying because first of all, it was a German officer that was in the house, so that house was kept immaculate. It wasn't ripped apart like some of the places were. And then he said to me, up in the attic, I have a bottle of Schliverwitz. That, you know what it is? It's liquor. And he put it up in the attic before he went into the woods. And he was wondering whether it was still there. So he went up to the attic, and sure enough, the bottle of Schliverwitz was there. Down it came, and we drank. So that worked out pretty good. I was considered the guy you could take something like that to. If he was Jewish, or he wanted to talk, I was the man that took care of that kind of business. And it worked. If I was taken into a group from Mississippi or Texas, I'm not sure that it would be so lenient. But since it was a New York group and a New Jersey group, they were used to being with Italians and Jews, so that wasn't a problem.
We need to conclude our presentation, but first we would like a word from Ms. Lutwin. She wanted to say something.
Oh, well, I've never heard your story before, and it was a one story. I never heard your story, Morris and Doris. I've heard a lot of stories at the center from Alex. I never got to hear your story before, and I'm so happy that I was here to hear it. It's a wonderful story, and it tells amazing things of history and also of humanity. I know that you said we still have things going on, but the purpose of the students being here and the purpose of the center is that we learn from the past. And hopefully you young people are the ambassadors. You've heard Alex's story of being hidden and surviving for years and living on chewed food from his mother and living on no food. And you're hearing the story of the liberator, what he found when he came to the camps. I know that the students here in Jericho Middle School have really studied a great deal, and your teachers have done amazing work. This quilt that you made for us is just astounding. The work and the effort that went into it, and the quotes and the pictures that you drew are amazing, and I know that the center is going to be so thrilled with it. I'm sure it will be put up in a place of honor. I want to thank you for that, and your teachers also, all that they do.
Good afternoon, this is Dr. Gailey. Just two quick announcements. Number one, remind your parents that tomorrow is a half day of school for all students. For our 8th graders, we'll have a graduation, moving up rehearsal periods 2 and 3. I just wanted to remind those students who qualify for the personal best dash around the campus that will take place tomorrow in the front circle. And I think I notified teachers 9:45, it's probably more likely at 10 a.m., okay? So all those students who qualified, make sure you bring sneakers. Let's see who the fastest kids in school is tomorrow.
Quiet, please. Go.
Thank you so much, Mr. and Mrs. Sunshine. It was such a pleasure and honor to have you here today. Here's a small token of appreciation for all that you do.
To conclude our program, we would like to bring up to the stage our two teachers, Ms. Galera and Ms. Adler, who will make their and our Board of Ed for enabling us to continue to work together and make programs such as these for all of you. I know we'd like to thank Mr. Gately, Dr. Gately, for our principal for coming. Dr. Silver is here, the Social Studies Curriculum Associate, and it is through their support that we are able to do such programs for you. Also, I'd like to thank our colleagues who are here to support us as well. And we just have one more thing to say. This will probably be the last time we'll be able to talk to our team as a group, and we hope that as you graduate, you hold on to the special memories we've made this year.
Yes, Ms. Galera.
Yay!
Love you. Love you.
Let me finish. Beyond your textbooks and your tests, we hope you keep close the life lessons you were taught, the inspirational people you encountered, like today, and the will to continue serving your community. Mr. Smith, Ms. Catalano, Ms. Adler, and I will miss you, and we hope that you come to visit us in your high school journey.